Welcome, welcome. I am so excited for our episode today and for our guest, Chris Kolenda. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
It's a delight being here, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited for the conversation. As always, I feel like we'll start talking and then I'll be like, wait, we have so much things to talk about. So I originally met Chris through the Wisconsin chapter of NSA, the National Speakers Association. And I know we had a chance to connect and just learn about each other a little bit and then meet each other in person at an event. And I was like, we need to learn more about Chris. We need to have you on the podcast. So, Chris Kolenda works with leaders to create sustainable growth using his 3-discipline leadership system, a framework forged in combat and proven in business. He grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, a skinny, awkward kid who became a target for creeps and bullies. Ooh, look at that. Determined to defend himself and others, he went to West Point, graduating near the top of his class. Chris led an 800 paratrooper task force in Afghanistan, and his unit accomplished something unprecedented. They motivated a large enemy force to switch sides and become allies, the only case in the 20-year war. It's phenomenal. I'm really interested to hear more about that, Chris. And that story is told in Jake Tapper's book, The Outpost. And today, Chris is a trusted advisor to cabinet secretaries, 4-star generals, NFL coaches, and CEOs, leaders who want durable success. He's the author of Leadership, The Warrior's Art, and the award-winning Zero Sum Victory, What We're Getting Wrong. Oh, there we go. There it is. And Zero Sum Victory, What We're Getting Wrong About War. His work has appeared on the front pages of the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. Most recently, Chris completed a 1,700 mile, I just need to emphasize, 1,700 mile bicycle ride to honor the 6 paratroopers from his unit who were killed in action. The journey that inspired him to found the Saber Six Foundation, working with veterans to turn post-combat stress into growth. Wow. Chris, the things that you have been able to do and overcome are amazing. And right off the bat, what I would love for you to do, if you could just share, because I know our listeners always love to hear, some of the background of like what got you into those things. So could you just share with a brief background first, like catch us up on some of that bio that I just read and really what got you here now?
Sure. I was, I don't know, leading people since I was 18 years old and have made just about all of the available mistakes as a leader. So there are probably a few I haven't discovered yet, but I will. And so what I what I love to do is work with people to avoid the same mistakes I made, to learn from my own experiences, and the experiences of other people, so that they can lead as their best selves and they can inspire their employees, their direct reports, their teammates to contribute their best. So I did that throughout the military. And when I when I retired from the military, I spent a couple of years, as you mentioned, as a Department of Defense civilian. So I was the Secretary of Defense's personal representative in early talks with the Taliban, like in 2011, 2012. And then resigned from government after that. And it was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to do what I love doing, which is working with leaders and organizations. And so I started my own consulting business. And that was, 11 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, it's been an absolute joy.
Mhm. What are like one of the things that really stand? I mean, this is incredible story. I mean, I only got a glimpse of it to share, with your bio, but being able to get this large enemy force to switch sides, and I know you most likely use a lot of the lessons from those experiences with leaders now. Like, what were some of the key things to be able to accomplish something like that you teach leaders?
Well, one of the things is about conflict management, something that everybody's interested in nowadays with all of the polarization in society, their workplace dramas, their social dramas. And oftentimes we can tend to retreat into our comfort zones, into our own silos and echo chambers, and then just point fingers and blame the other side. And in Afghanistan, one of the things that I learned is that, disagreement is inevitable. People from different walks of life, different points of view, different ideas are going to disagree, and disagreement can be very, very healthy because that's what leads to innovation. I mean, after all, innovation is a dissatisfaction with the status quo. It's a disagreement with the status quo. So disagreement, when it's healthy, it leads to innovation and growth and all sorts of improvements in an organization. Conflict, however, derails all of that progress. It pits people against each other. It impedes growth. It limits cooperation and undermines productivity. And one of the things I learned in Afghanistan was, if disagreement is inevitable, conflict is voluntary.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so then it's like, okay, well, how do we make sure that disagreement stays in the right place and doesn't devolve into conflict? And if it does devolve into conflict, how do we right that ship very quickly? And one of the sort of seminal experiences in Afghanistan, we had been taking rocket attacks. 107 millimeter rocket will fling a piece of shrapnel the size of your smartphone, the length of a football field. And we had one, I remember, landed directly on the outpost, ripped through one of the tents, and wounded one of our soldiers. And I was angry. I mean, we'd been getting these rocket attacks 2 or 3 times a month. This is the first time I wounded somebody. I mean, I was angry. I was, at them. I was, scared in the sense of, like, I don't know what to do about this. So I guess frustrated maybe is a better term. It's like, I don't know what to do about this because they're shooting rockets from like deep in the mountains on the other side of a raging river that we couldn't cross with our vehicles. And I was just like, I was at a loss in terms of what to do. And none of the conventional solutions that you could imagine were going to do anything but make the problem worse. And so one day I just got all the leaders together and said, what do we do about this? And I had always created a culture in my organizations where disagreement does not equal disrespect. I wanted people to disagree because that clash of ideas is where we're going to get the best results. And we went back and forth. And my Afghan counterpart, who is not used to sort of open and vigorous debate like this. So he's an Afghan Army lieutenant colonel. And I looked at him and I said, Shirama, what do you think? What do you think we ought to do? And he says, what if I go talk to them?
Wow.
Yeah. Tell me more. Well, Chris, we don't know why these angry brothers are fighting, why these angry brothers are angry. And if you go up there, they'll think it's an attack. If I go up there with my battalion, my Afghan soldiers, they are more likely to think that it's a friendly visit. And so they were on the same outpost we were, so they were dealing with these rocket attacks too. It was affecting them too. So it's like, well, let's give it a go. And because of that, he went out to the village. His vehicles were like pickup trucks, and they could cross this bridge over this river. He's gone all day. He comes back at the end of it, and so we're talking. I said, Cheryl, what'd you find out? He says, well, Chris, they're shooting rockets at us. All right. What else did you find out?
Yeah.
Or like, why? And so, and essentially it was, there had been a night raid on the village a few years back, and they felt disrespected. They felt their elders and wives and daughters were disrespected. And so therefore this is retaliation. I'm like, okay, well, I can get that. What else did you find out? He said, well, they really want their kids to go to school. And all they have is a 3-walled building with no roof, one chalkboard. The girls go in the morning, about 250 girls go in the morning, about 300 boys go in the afternoon, and they really want their kids to be educated. And so it's like, wow. Because of that, we were like, we'd been collecting school supplies in the or before that, because I think, like, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what your language is, your religion, what part of the world you live on. We all want what's best for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
So when people ask, what can we send? Like, don't send us candy. Send us notebooks and pens, because we
Yeah.
want to support kids' education.
Um,
Because we think it would be an important bridge. So we had boxes and boxes of oodles of school supplies within weeks. And so I asked Sharamad if he'd be willing to go back, and he said, of course. They're very nice people. I'm like, all right. So a couple days later, we load up boxes, oodles of school supplies, launch him out. He goes back, and he's gone all day. And he returns, and he says, they were very thankful. And I thought, well, maybe this is a bridge, because we could never get them to talk to us. We had no interaction with them whatsoever. And maybe this is a bridge we can stop this sort of tit for tat cycle of violence that have been going on. And this is just one of many places. And the next day, I'll never forget it. The next day, the front gate's like, hey, Chris, there's a bunch of elders at the gate to see you. Like, oh, where are they from? Oh, they're from this village. It's like, oh, let them in. And so Sharamad and I are meeting with them and greeting each one of them. And we get to the head elder. And the head elder hands me a stack of papers. And I'm like, what is this? And he says, these are thank you notes.
Oh, wow.
Written by our children using the notebooks and pens that you gave them. And so, like, my heart's melting at this point. And he says, there would be more, but most of them didn't think their handwriting was good enough for you. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. I mean, now instead of like a group of elders, like, I'm seeing parents who want what's right for their kids. I'm seeing parents who want a better future for their kids. And we spent the whole day talking about their priorities. They were very adamant about wanting to school. And so we worked with a non-governmental organization to build a school. And the elders, they donated land, they donated labor, and they got the school up. And this school is working to this day. So this would be 18 years later.
Wow.
They've defended it against militant attacks. And what I learned from that is, like, when you're dealing with conflict, it tends to be like an iceberg. So let me draw this on the whiteboard. So conflict can be a bit like an iceberg. I need to plug my pen back in. Hold on a second.
You're good.
Let's try. There we go. All right. So conflict can be a bit like an iceberg. So if you imagine this is the iceberg, and what we see above the waterline are people's behaviors. What they do, what they say. And if we only focus on the behaviors, then you're never going to get anywhere. Because below the behaviors are assumptions that we make about their intentions. And because we're only seeing those assumptions through the waterline, there is always a distortion. So everything that we tend to assume about people's behaviors is distorted and sometimes flat out wrong. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea, for example, that these rocket attacks were because of retaliation. I thought that they were just terrorist-loving people who wanted to fight us, and then you find out something different. And what I discovered, and it's thanks to Sher Ahmad, is I don't know why my thing is like flaming out on me. What I discovered from Sher Ahmad and this interaction is that what you have to do is get at the base of the iceberg. And at the base of the iceberg are people's goals and aspirations. And and that's where you can find common ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found common ground on education and supporting children. And so that realization that you've got to focus on finding common ground rather than the blame game was transformational for us. And we use that approach time and time again. And that's eventually how this big insurgent group stopped fighting and switched sides.
And it's just, I mean, this story is just amazing. I was jotting down, I already have like a page of notes, Chris, because I'm like jotting down like, oh my gosh, I want to emphasize that. Like, first of all, thank you for sharing this. And I guess the first thing that came to my mind when you were talking, and so these elders come and you're having this cordial conversation, you get these thank you notes. And just to like reiterate for myself and to everyone, these were people, essentially, their area was the ones that were shooting stuff at you, firing things at you, essentially like days before.
Yes. Absolutely. And whenever you're in conflict, I mean, it could be just something as simple as a workplace conflict with a fellow employee, or a neighbor who seems to be behaving badly. I mean, oftentimes conflict. I mean, there's all this emotion. There's this anger, there's this frustration, and with these, I mean, over there, I mean, that's at a very acute level because you're dealing with life and death of people that you love and people who are looking to you for leadership, for answers. And so it can be very difficult to recognize those emotions. You don't discount them. You recognize them, recognize what they're trying to tell you, and at the same time look at, there we go, the aspirations. Try to understand what is their perspective on this. What's their point of view? What's truly motivating their behavior? Because what I think is motivating their behavior, I have found so often, what I think is not true. And so the common ground is right there. And that's what I discovered.
And that's just the fact, I think for most, I guess I'll just make it. Most people listening probably have not been through, and I'm sure there are some that are listening who have been through things like this. I would assume a lot of people haven't. And so one of the things that I just want to emphasize is the fact that this story exemplifies that in such a high stakes situation, like you said, where there's life and death on the line, that people, when they can put that guard down and take down those assumptions of what's happening, like, look what can happen in our everyday, those of us who are, live in a part of the world where we don't need to experience some of the things. I mean, there's just so many things going on in the world, right? And in our everyday of, just like you said, with a neighbor or with work, we're not in this life or death situation. People can be so stubborn and get so, just plant their feet in the ground and point the fingers and make up all of these stories and refuse to try and find that common ground. And so this is just an example of, like, if people in that part of the world at that time, who it's life or death, like people are shooting stuff at me, we think that you don't want us here, all of those things. If they can do it, we should be able to do it with our neighbors.
Yeah, and so often it's the emotion that takes over and just becomes triggering. And so we had to ask ourselves, like, is the tit for tat retaliation, is that taking us closer to where we wanted to be, or is it taking us further away? And so, I mean, it's taken us further away. And when Share Ahmad said, what if I go talk to them? I mean, that was a huge opening. And I mean, and to their credit, like they seized this opportunity. And they then, I mean, were very vulnerable in coming to the outpost because, I mean, they didn't know, were we gonna arrest them? Were we gonna detain them? Were we gonna do something else? But they're like, okay, this was a gesture, school supplies, something that clearly would resonate with them. And so they took a step into becoming vulnerable, if you will, and with that outreach and just trusting that we would reciprocate in kind, and so sometimes it just takes those gestures is not the right term. Those actions that show that, hey, you were listening and you have an insight into what's important to me, and you took an action that meaningfully addressed it. And so now I can do something similar.
And something that I wrote this down and like circled it is just so interesting to me, that difference between the disagreement versus the conflict. And, you said a couple things, and, that disagreement isn't disrespect, and seeing that difference between disagreement and conflict, and just this idea that oftentimes, especially in personal situations, of course, I think that even, we can get so attached to people not agreeing with us on all the things. And also, in the workplace perspective, it's like people feel like, well, everyone needs to agree with me, or everyone has to have this agreement. And so I just love that reframe that you share around. It's not about, we all need to, like, healthy disagreement is good. It's to open up those conversations, but that difference between the disagreement and the conflict.
Yeah. If we never disagreed, we wouldn't have the wheel. Because people disagreed about how to get something from point A to point B. So if you find that there is conflict or disagreement that's becoming difficult to manage, here is a very simple 3-step process. Because conflict can only be about one of 3 things at the end of the day. It's either about goals, so what you're trying to accomplish, ways to do it, or recognition. And so when you think about conflict management, the first step is, do we agree on the goal? Because oftentimes, and this happened in the White House Situation Room all the time, people are talking past each other. Some people are talking about goals, some people are talking about ways, some people are talking about recognition and credit, and you never get anywhere. So the first thing that you've got to do is see if you have the same goal in mind. And a great way to look at goals is through the 4 W's. Who's responsible? What is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? Why? So what are the results and outcomes that we want to achieve by accomplishing this goal? And then by when? 4 W's, really simple. Once you agree on the goals, if this is your start point, then the next step is to talk through the ways. So invariably, there are going to be ways A, B, and C. And you can debate the merits. You can discuss the merits of ways A, B, and C to get to that goal and come to a resolution on what's the best one. What's the one that's going to get us to the goal the best? And then if there's still disagreement, then the final step is it's going to be about recognition. Maybe there's somebody on your team and your organization that maybe they were a bill payer for the last sort of change or initiative, and they don't feel like they had sufficient recognition for their contributions. And so now they're going to push back and say, I don't want to go through that again. Or somebody really contributed to your last event and or last idea, and again, maybe they don't think that their team's contributions were appropriately recognized, et cetera. And so you can get conflict because of that. So whenever you have in a workplace disagreement, that is becoming distracting. And then it's that process. Do we have the same goal in mind? So if yes, then let's check the ways. If no, let's get either a consensus on the goal or go to the decision maker and say, hey, what are the 4 W's here? Second is, all right, well, now let's discuss the ways to get there and what's the best. And then third is make sure everybody's appropriately recognized for their contributions.
Those are such great, tangible, like, things. And I was like jotting it down. So if anyone was just listening, like, pause, go back and re-listen to that part, because that was like gold. Thank you for sharing that. It's very tangible, actual. And I would just imagine that everybody listening right now has some type of conflict, whether it's a very small little, what I call bickerment, like one of those like little things or just like kind of bickering, or it's a really big, very highly emotionally charged conflict. Those things that you shared can be helpful. And again, it's really getting to that. I love this, just getting to that, what can we agree upon, and like going and building from there. As you work with teams and leaders and as you use these ideas with people, where do you see the most resistance from people around doing this type of stuff?
What I find, and conflict management is closely related to change management, because whenever there's change, there's going to be some sort of disagreement and conflict, and that ultimately is closely associated with buy-in. So at the heart of change management is buy-in. When people buy in and they're willing to pull the oars in the right direction and cadence, they are going to your change is going to be successful, or at least going to be implemented. Can't guarantee its success, but at least it'll be implemented with enthusiasm. But if there's no buy-in, then you're going to have all sorts of challenges. And so one of the worst change management ideas ever in the history of the world is the burning platform. The burning platform comes from BP Horizon. That was the oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico that burned and burned and burned and burned. And it forced British Petroleum to make a lot of changes. And so the theory is, if you can create a crisis, or if people know that there's this crisis brewing, then they will buy in, no questions asked. They'll recognize the need for change. Well, the problem is that leaders will often manufacture a crisis or blow something way out of proportion, and it's not believable. And so not only getting resistance to that change, you've also undermined your credibility. And there are plenty of examples in the last 5 years of experts and leaders damaging their credibility in this way. And so, buy-in is really, it's a result of 3 things. Clarity. People have to know what you want them to buy into. Second is confidence. They have to believe that it's going to be successful. That's going to work. And then third is self-interest. They have to believe they're better off. And so whenever you have 3 things, what's awesome about threes is you can do a 3-circle Venn diagram. So I'm going to draw up a 3-circle Venn diagram on the magic whiteboard.
I love it, the magic whiteboard.
Yeah. And
those of you who are listening to the podcast, and Chris is talking through these things, but if you want to see the beautiful video of the magic whiteboard, make sure you check out the YouTube channel and watch the full video so that you can see it too, because it's cool. Yeah, and I'd be happy to send you the screenshots or PDFs of much neater versions of these models. So buy-in, clarity,
confidence. I'm just labeling each of the three circles, and enlightened self-interest, or better off.
Mm.
And so you use this as a diagnostic tool by labeling the intersections. So you can see what happens if something's missing. So if you are in intersection number 1, where there's clarity about what you want people to buy into, and people genuinely believe that they're going to be better off, but they have no confidence that the idea is going to work. I mean, what happens, Julie, when people have no confidence that something's going to work? What have you seen?
If they don't have confidence it's going to work, well, usually they're not really going to put a whole lot of effort into it.
Boom. Right on. Yeah, they're gonna apply no effort. I was working with a fire department recently, and they had, like, their union and management were at absolute loggerheads, and they're just, it is spiraling downward with each mutual recrimination. And they knew that they would be better off with a productive relationship. They knew that they wanted that, so they had clarity and self-interest. They had no confidence that they could overcome, like, the history, the past, the conflict. And so they asked me to come work with them. And the first thing we did was something similar to we did with different insurgent groups and elders, is we just started building trust. Small steps leading to bigger and more concrete steps. And eventually, after a few iterations of that, they got the confidence that this could work. And so then they leaned in, and now they're a different department. Going back to the whiteboard, if you're in intersection 2, people know what you want to buy into. They're confident that it's going to work, but they think they're going to be worse off in the process. What would you expect to see there?
I guess what comes for me is, like, I still feel like you wouldn't be totally bought into it. You're not going to do it because it's like, well, if it's not that self-interest, what's in it for me?
Right. Yeah. And so if you think you're going to be
that,
worse
like, one foot in, one foot out, like, I don't know if I want to fully commit to this.
Yeah. And in fact, oftentimes you're going to get active resistance. So if people think they're worse off, like, they're going to do everything they can to slow roll, to impede, to resist the change. And then finally, if you're in intersection 3, where there's no clarity, then of course what you get is confusion. Where you get some people just waiting around being told what to do, other people going 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction, and it's just chaos. What you want, of course, is to have all three. So intersection number 4, where all three are working, is your happy place. In fact, we'll turn that green. And that's where you expect to see people are pitching in. People are innovating. They are embracing change with enthusiasm. They're rowing the boat hard. And all of those productive things that you want in change management are going to happen when you got all three. And so you could just look at your employees' behaviors and you say, okay, well, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a lot of foot dragging. I'm seeing a lot of pushback. Okay, well, it may be because they don't believe they're going to be better off. And in the case of better off, we can't lecture people into believing they're better off. Like, you're going to be better. This is good for you.
They need to see it.
That doesn't happen, right? Take your medicine.
You're right.
So people have to come to that conclusion for themselves. And as leaders, we can do things that assist that effort, getting them to talk about the advantages and disadvantages, asking them to put their fingerprints on it, asking them to actually co-create the change, are a couple of the ways that leaders can work with people so they come to the conclusion that actually I'm better off by buying in.
And this is so timely. So we host executive forums, and this just makes me think because we just had one yesterday where I had some panel guests on, and we were talking about the future of work and just like what do leaders need to prioritize in 2026. And obviously, AI and digital space and technology, all of that is such a big conversation right now, along with the change and how do we bring people along. And this was so a part of that to think about like there's so much changing. We say change and technology changes fast. It's like changing faster than ever. And so all these things, that's why I'm like, it's just top of mind. I'm like, all these things that you're sharing is such a good like toolkit for people's tool belt if you're going through that right now. Cause I know that was a big part of the conversation for people is like there's resistance, there's conflict over how we should be using these different things, what we used to do, all of that. It's just such a big part of that. And so I just love that you're sharing this because I know this is a big thing right now for organizations with the amount of change. Actually, I'm going to do a quick little plug for our executive forum in January because it's all about going from this fear to how do we embrace AI in terms of leadership and like all of the change that brings. So our one in January is going to be about AI, but more so from the perspective of how do we help organizations and people with the change side of it. So we'll put a little link in the show notes for those of you who are listening if you want to join the forum there, because this is a big part of the conversation. And Chris, another thing that just really came up that I want to make sure we talk about before we wrap up today is as you're talking about this and like the change and getting people on board, I mean, a big part, I guess a question for you, and you can opt out of answering this one if you want, but I'm just curious.
I'll never do that.
Okay, I was like, I'm just curious because right now, and with change and with all of the things going on, there's a lot of trauma for people. There's a lot of things that people are carrying with them, right? We always say when you come into the workplace, when you come into relationships with people, you've got all of your stuff. Well, you've been in situations that you have seen, heard, experienced things that I will say I've never had to. Some people can relate and some people can't because they either have or haven't been in there. How have you navigated going from all of that, experiencing all of that, to being able to show up as you do now? Like, just how do you carry that with you?
Thanks for that question. Part of it is one of our fallen heroes is named Adrian Hike, and he had seen a lot of combat in Iraq, and then when I was leading the unit and we were getting ready to go to Afghanistan, I mean, Adrian had all of the like telltale signs of what we would call post-traumatic stress disorder. He's drinking, he's getting in fights. And so he was staff sergeant, and he eventually had to get busted down. And, I ultimately had to do that down to private. So that's a loss of like 5 ranks. Just to give you an indication of just the challenges he was having. And then he started bouncing forward. And I remember talking to him one day. I said, like, Adrian, like, tell me what's changed. Because like what you're doing is remarkable. And he's making all of his rank back. And it's incredible. And he said, I'll never forget it. He said, I can't change the past, but I can control what I do with it. And that has stuck with me. I can't change the creeps and bullies from high school. I can't change some of the things that I've experienced that I wish I hadn't. I can decide what I do with it. And so that's one thing, is that sense of agency, I think is key. A second thing is storytelling. We had a great meeting yesterday about storytelling with the National Speakers Association.
I missed that one. I'm so bummed.
It was fabulous. I was sorry you couldn't make it.
Oh, I'm so bummed.
And the ability to like put your stories into a structure that and convey them in ways that people can understand is really, really vital. And so often for veterans, we don't have a really good way of conveying stories our stories in a way that people who haven't been there could understand them. And so you just hold it inside, and that becomes a real challenge for most people. So telling stories of, our time in combat, just like with the with the elders in the school earlier, and some of our fallen heroes. I mean, I think it's very important for me, peace of mind wise. And then, as you mentioned, I started the Saber Six Foundation to work with veterans who want to turn post-combat stress into growth. So we're a 501c3. I'm not sure if you're aware of the numbers, but since 9/11, the post 9/11 wars, we had just over 7,000 service members killed in action. And, of course, tens of thousands wounded. In that same period of time, or actually since 9/11, over 150,000 veterans have died by suicide.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I did not know those numbers.
It's staggering. And that doesn't even count the diseases and deaths of despair. So overdoses and, driving your motorcycle at 200 miles an hour, and crashing. So when you total all of those numbers, I mean, you could pack Lambeau Field twice and still have people waiting at every gate to get inside. And so that's what we do at Saber Six Foundation is we work with people who want to grow. Because I think when you get people oriented on growth, they don't spiral into crisis. And so all of our programs are organized around helping people, like working with people who want to get up on the green line of growth and stay there. And I mean, we're 3 years old now. Of the people actively involved in our programs, no suicides, no overdoses, no attempts. So yeah, we're onto something, and we're scaling our efforts every day, and so that brings joy as well. That sense of service.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because again, this kind of makes me think of I think sometimes people shy away from having these types of conversations again in the workplace. If somebody's experienced something, or even again personally, we can shy away from these conversations because we feel uncomfortable, because I can't relate to what you've been through because I haven't experienced it. However, that I think then prevents people from having these conversations and for giving people the space to have it. And I think just asking people, and they can choose whether they want to talk about it or not talk about it, is just another good thing. So I just want to thank you, because of those of people who are listening, whether you have experienced these types of things, and these tips will be helpful of hey, find a community of other people, talk about it, what do you need to do? Or if you're somebody who hasn't experienced that, you've experienced something else that you probably would want somebody to at least give you space to talk about or to know you're there. And so what you're doing with Saber Six Foundation is absolutely amazing. We'll make sure that we put that in the show notes as well, where people can find more information about that, because those numbers are staggering. And I know that we probably have other vets listening, or people who have friends or family that could benefit from this.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate you saying that. And we could have a whole nother episode on having conversations.
Yes. Yeah.
There's accountability and all of those other.
I know, that's where I'm like, we could have 7 different episodes on all the things you brought up. But I just want to, first of all, just say thank you so much. I mean, you shared so many things. Just to highlight, first of all, just sharing your story. And again, talking about storytelling, just I was leaning in, engaged, wait, I have so many questions on it. So thank you for sharing that. And some of the biggest things around what can happen when we just let our guard down and we don't make those assumptions, and that pyramid that you shared with the behaviors and the assumptions and the aspirations, and reminding people to get to that common goal, and the difference between the disagreement and the conflict, and how to think about those, and the the whiteboard you shared with the 4 W's, so much gold. Those of you who are listening, I hope you realize how much Chris just shared with us. So as we start to wrap up, Chris, I know that people are probably going to want to find you, connect with you, like share with our listeners how they can stay connected with you.
The best way is my website, chriskolenda.com. I'm on LinkedIn frequently. That's the platform that I use. I've also got a YouTube channel. Yeah, chriskolenda.com and my email, chris@chriskolenda.com. Delighted to connect with folks.
Amazing. And we'll make sure, again, we'll share all those in the show notes along with how you can follow Chris, and we'll put all your links in there. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us, for everything that you shared. Everyone listening, one of the best ways that you can show a big thank you to Chris and all of the value he gave us is to make sure to leave rating and review on the podcast. Share this episode, especially he's on LinkedIn. So share this on LinkedIn and share, what stood out for you. What was the thing that you're taking away? I'm sure he would love even to get a message from you saying, hey, thanks for that episode. And I'm really, I'm loving this, but share this out so that we can get this message out with more people. And thank you all so much. And remember that it starts with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. And I appreciate what you do to help leaders inspire people to contribute their best.
Thank you.